G'day everyone, welcome back to another weekly tipping video on the channel. Going to be going over my tips for round 11 of the 2025 AFL season. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you do go on to enjoy today's video. Let's get straight into it. Okay, so my tips from round 10. We've been in good tipping form as of late, but unfortunately we weren't able to back it up. We got a 5 out of 9 for the week. A few upsets we did have, or just a few 50-50s not go our way. We tipped the Suns over the Hawks. Good game this was. We tipped the Swans over the Blues, the Pies over the Crows, and another close game. Went with Port Adelaide. Just thought back at home they'd up the intensity, up the ante, but unfortunately had a lot of soft tissue injuries occur. Lachie Jones, Horne-Francis, but yeah, the Cats absolutely purring. The Giants over the Dockers, usually very good at NG Stadium, GWS, but they're looking concerning. But Fremantle got back to their best with some really good ball movement. The Dogs over the Dons, 90 points. Wasn't expecting that big of a margin. North Melbourne over Richmond, close game this was. The Lions I did tip against the D's. They got an upset win and did go with the Saints. And last week, I was bullish on the Eagles. Should have just backed them in, but West Coast finally get their first win of the season. Now for a quick look at my tipping competition and leaderboard update. You can still join, absolutely free to do so. Link is in the description. As expected, it was a tricky round for tipping, so no one got themselves a full 9 out of 9 score. As for who is leading my competition, we've actually got 4 people with 84 points at the moment. ESPN fam, 𝐼𝐴, Rhinos, Ruffles, and 𝐶𝐶's all tied first. So now let's begin with the tips for round 11. We begin on a really good looking Thursday night battle. The Cats versus the Dogs, and all the attention focused is Bailey Smith in arguably Brownlow winning form with how his season's going, facing his former side of the Western Bulldogs. As for the Dogs, probably one of the more informed teams in the competition after the Pies. They have looked brilliant. They've won 4 out of the last 5. Their midfield, probably one of the more damaging units in the competition. They've been great off stoppage, getting a lot of points from that area. Even with Aaron Naughton having some form issues, they've still been able to find a way to put on a lot of points. Riley West had a great game last week, kicked 4 goals. And just off the ball, their intensity, their pressure is just brutal. And they did knock off the Cats at the Cattery last year, and it was a wet game from memory, and their ground level game, their contested game, smacked the Cats. So that's basically the same recipe they're wanting to replicate heading into this game. If they can just absolutely blitz the Cats around the football, that will be one of the key ways to winning this game, I think, for the Dogs. As for Geelong, way too slick for Port Adelaide last week. Port looking pretty poor, their ball skills, and you know, when you turn the ball over against a quality side like the Cats in dangerous areas, they'll make you pay. Cameron off the back of a big bag. Oisin Mullen's been doing a bit of a tagging role as of late. He shut out 𝐷𝐴 a few weeks ago in the 4th quarter. Butters, he was tremendous on last week, so you'd think he probably goes on to, I'd say, Ed Richards, similar build, and his foot skills has been elite. Very tricky one to tip here. The Cats at home are hard to go against, but the Dogs with their form, and they play fairly good football here. They're also a really good looking team to tip, but I'll throw my tip here towards the Cats at home. I reckon if the Cats can break even in the contest, they could probably get the Dogs on the outside with their ball movement. They set up really well defensively as well. Both teams high on confidence, but I'll go with the Cats here. Safe tip at home. We'll go Geelong here by 8 points. Then for Friday night, we've got the Dreamtime game between the Dons and the Tigers at the MCG. Richmond off the back of a pretty close loss against North Melbourne. Thought they were a bit unlucky though. Their foot skills inside 50 late, and especially their goal kicking did let them down. Probably should have ran away with that result. But even though their gulf between their best and worst football has been evident watching them this year, they still have been fairly entertaining, because when they bring the heat, when they bring the intensity, some young kids are really thriving out there, like Sam Banks off half-back, and Tom Brown's been in good form intercepting, and Sam Lawler as well. Geez, he's looking like he's going to be a jet. They're not a bad watch, and it's just like heading into every single game for the Tigers. They don't really have much to lose because they're always going to be the underdog. They're always going to try and put their opposition under pressure. And there's just so much pressure on Essendon this week to bounce back after a horror show against the Western Bulldogs. Lost by 90 points. It was a typical Essendon performance when they're not looking good and when they're low on confidence. Unforced errors in the back half. They couldn't really get out of the defensive 50 for most parts of the game. They've been pretty sound defensively, but when a side like the Dogs really challenge her with their pressure off the ball and their ground level game, they were just under duress for all night long. Will be a few personnel issues for the Tigers. No Noel Bolter, obviously, with a curfew. Tom Lynch is also out concussed as well. Just got to bring relentless pressure all night long, the Tigers, and I think they are a chance. But yeah, as I said before, they've had some poor patches, poor quarters throughout their games so far this year. And if they let it slip, I think Essendon could definitely get a run on here. No doubt they would have brought their mouth guards to training today. So I'd expect a lot more of a response in terms of intensity and physicality. So we'll go Essendon here. And a close game by 11. For the Saturday games now, first one up, we do have the Blues taking on the Giants at Marvel Stadium. Carlton did lose against the Swannies last week, where they had the game in their control for most of the night. Game turned into an arm wrestle, but really let it slip. They should get Tom DeConey back in for this clash, so massive player this season on his follow-up work and just playing as an extra midfielder. They had some nice hit-ups inside 50 on Friday night, but still they had a surplus amount of inside 50s go to waste, so need to neaten that up against GWS, where still overall their defence can hold up really well with Sam Taylor and Buckley, and Connor Oden sneakily having a good year too. So if they have those poor, maybe shallow entries and just looping the high balls up inside 50, the Giants no doubt could bounce really well from the back half. But yeah, the GWS Giants, the last 5 games only won the one game, and with that win over the Cats, it came at the expense of Geelong probably wasting their chances, but also Jessie Hogan kicking 7 goals. So it's sort of that scenario of the Giants where they need Jessie Hogan to most likely have a big game for them to win games of football. But GWS probably one of the more mentally tough and balanced and resilient teams in the competition, so it wouldn't surprise me if they get a bounce back result here. Need to be more ferocious in the midfield battles. I also feel like their contest-to-contest work hasn't been good enough. Opposition sides have been able to move the ball a bit too fast for their liking, and they haven't been able to keep up defensively. I just feel like Carlton at home are hard to go against, and GWS have also been a pretty high inside 50s against sides. So I think that if the Blues get a lot of those repeat entries, they should be able to find a way to win this game. And I think their midfield will be a bit too good for the Giants. So we're back in the Blues here. We'll be too good in the end and win a close one by 14. Next game up, we have Hawthorn taking on the Lions at the MCG, 4:15 p.m. Hawthorn did lose against the Suns last week up in Darwin, but not really much shame in that. It's very difficult to beat the Suns up there. But I'd say they'd be proud with their efforts. Overall, the midfield performance probably not, but they did get a run on of goals and did lead at three-quarter time. They just look dangerous in their forward half when their players get up and about. And Ginnivan and Dylan Moore and Nick Watson, he changed the game, turned the game on its head basically in that second quarter. So could they be the difference in this matchup? Where Brisbane, they've been fairly ordinary the last fortnight. They did get a really strong performing win against the Gold Coast Suns, but since that they've drawn against North Melbourne and lowered their colours in the fourth quarter against the D's. I felt like they just were pretty panicked under the Demons forward half pressure. They weren't moving the ball as slickly as they were in that first half, so they need to find a way to combat that. They are one of the more connected teams in the competition, and they are just such a professional outfit, so I'd expect a mature response here, but they don't really have a great record over the Hawks. I think they dropped their game in 2023, and then they lost against them in Marvel whilst they weren't playing so great early last year. So Hawthorn do have the upper hand here. I think if the Hawks are able to bring their link-up play through the back half, could be one of the key ways for them winning this game of footy. Need a response too, because their midfield wasn't good enough against the Suns last week, and Brisbane, arguably one of the best midfields in the comp. But I'm going to go against the grain here. I just feel like a bounce back is on the cards here. I just think Brisbane for a mature response when their midfield gets on top of this game, and I reckon that they can outdo the Hawks with their uncontested ball movement. So Brisbane to win this one by 13. Saturday night games now. First night we do have North Melbourne taking on the Pies at Marvel Stadium. North the last 3 weeks have looked a lot better, and I think one of the main areas of improvement is they've just gotten a lot more of a response from their midfield group. They belted the Tigers in clearances in that win last week, and the midfield really got on top of the Lions in that second half, and the same can be said for Port Adelaide. It was certainly an ugly way. They won their game against the Tigers, but they just needed that tick in the win column to potentially get a bit of a boost of morale in the playing group and a bit of confidence. But playing the latter ladies here of the Pies, it will be a tricky test. But they seem to play decent against Collingwood the last few seasons. Collingwood, they've just been blitzing it, defensively looking like one of the more sounder teams in the competition. They set up so well behind the ball, and they can rebound really well with their quick handballing game. I think if North are able to bring this into a bit of an arm wrestle, belt the Pies around the football and gain some ascendancy in that area, then hey, they could have the supply to kick enough points and make this a contest. But it's just hard to go against the Pies, really. I've been backing them in for the most part this season. And look, I think North can make this a contest, but I just think Pies' quality behind the ball and their turnover game can do the job here over the Kangas. So we'll tip the Pies here, and we'll go with them by 25 points. Then the other Saturday night game, we have Fremantle taking on Port Adelaide at Optus Stadium. Port off the back of another big defeat. That's their third defeat this season, with a total margin being over 70 points. I've had a few players go down. Kane Farrell had surgery the other week. Horn Francis is out with a soft tissue problem. Jones go down. Josh Sim went down the first few minutes. So a few handy depth players out of that side, and Fremantle will be sky high on confidence. Just what they needed. A really good quality win where they brought their strengths to the table away from home. That's the big thing. Away from home against the Giants. Their ball movement looked great. They took corridor. They moved it with pace. They really got the handball receive game going. And it was a great midfield battle against the Giants. Totally outdid them. Brayshaw and Sarong really good. Not only inside, but also the outside. Jackson was a solo ruck. Surely they persist with him. His athleticism and his follow-up work was elite, especially against the Giants. Just how he could grab it out of the ruck and hand pass it and get first use for his midfielders will be a key area. Dante Vicentini, think he'll continue to be playing games. Looks like a really physical ruckman, so could he make it a bit of a contest should he play? I'm a bit of a sucker for Port Adelaide with tipping them this season, but I just can't really go with them here. If they had maybe a full-strength side and they need desperately a response, then yeah, I actually would consider them, but with the cattle they now have out with Horn Francis especially, they're looking physically and mentally shot with how they're playing. They're leaking goals. They have poor patches of pressure throughout games. I just don't have the confidence to go with Port Adelaide here given their circumstances. I think Fremantle off the back of that really good win where they brought their strengths to the table. They've been fairly good at home this season as well. We'll go to the Dockers here and win this game by 28 points. For the Sunday games now, first one up, we have the Adelaide Crows taking on the West Coast Eagles at the Adelaide Oval. West Coast finally got their first win of the season, and it was a fairly emotional one too. Of course, rest in peace to Adam Selwood. Very sad passing. It's never great to see, but they had a really good response. And just how they played, just passionate and really energetic with how they moved the pill. Their intensity and their pressure was really good. They put the Saints under the pump with a lot of disposals. They had poor turnovers, the Saints, and they were able to capitalise really well. Hoff was probably one of the best on ground. He's been playing as a midfielder as of late. Looks quality. Harley Reid had a really solid game as well. And they had winners in the forward half. A lot of marks inside 50. Bailey Williams, Jake Waterman got on the board a couple of times too. So how will they fare heading over to Adelaide to take on the Crows? They don't really have a great record over the Crows here. Yeah, the Crows at home, they're hard to go against. They were somewhat disappointing in a way against the Pies. They were in a winnable position. I thought their inside 50 use let them down a bit, and their rebound from the halfback just wasn't good enough. The Pies able to outdo them on the turnover, but should get a response here at home against the Eagles. But I'm intrigued. Could West Coast make this a bit of a contest, gain a bit of ascendancy maybe in the midfield? But I just think at home it's hard to go against the Crows here, where they've looked pretty strong at home this season. So the Crows to knock off the Eagles here. Maybe West Coast bring the intensity for a quarter or so, but I think Adelaide will have too much of that class and firepower in the high-octane forward line they do boast, and the Crows to kick a big score here and win by 35 points. Next game up, we have the D's taking on the Swans at the MCG. This one looks like a really tasty mid-table clash, if I do say so myself, at the MCG, 3:20 PM it is. The D's heading in this one as outsiders, interestingly enough, but I'd say they're probably the side in a little bit more of form, and the Tails would certainly be up with that win against the Lions at the Gabba back on Sunday, and then we'll be getting Jake Lever back into this lineup most likely, so another important member back into that defence to give them a bit of stability. But their pressure, the forward half game, they just found a way to win. And Sydney have always been known as a side where if they do get under the pump in their back half and opposition sides really bring the pressure, they can struggle. So if Melbourne can replicate that, I think they will be a key area for them should they win this game. But Sydney were able to get a good solid win against the Blues last week. It was an arm wrestle for most of that game, but yeah, the class and the cream really rose to the top with Chad Warren and 𝐼𝙗𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐾 being the more impactful players. But yeah, defensively they held up fairly well again. Tom McCartan's been in great form, and at the wide open ground of the MCG, if you just allow the Swans to really get their turnover game going, they can put on a big score. And midfield battle should be interesting. The past few weeks, the D's have been winning those contested possession battles, and especially the clearances. This one's a really tricky one to tip. Sydney's slight favourites. I guess that's sort of fair enough given the record. But I'm just really liking the D's at the moment. They've really been under the radar for me, and I think they can take a big scalp here of the Swans and continue their record. I think they can get on top of that midfield battle. Clayton Oliver to do a bit of that cooling roles he's been doing on opposition plays, do that on potentially Warner. I think they'll really bring the heat and intensity and pressure to outdo the Swans here. But yeah, I think this one will go back and forth, but the D's to be that tinge too good for the Swans, and they'll win this game by 12 points. And for the final game of the round, we do have the Saints taking on the Gold Coast Suns at Marvel Stadium. St Kilda, they've just been oh so inconsistent this season. They were able to get to their strengths of their ground level game and ferociousness around the football and their pressure in that win over the Dockers at Marvel Stadium. And then a few weeks later, they go out and lose against the Eagles. But I still guess you got to remember, the Saints are a fairly young team. Gold Coast, you got to give them their flowers. They are one of the top teams in the competition. Their forward half game is looking elite. They just fight so hard to win back possession in dangerous areas. Ben Long have been loving this season. The pressure's been great. The turnover game looking up there. It's looking like a 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐿𝐴 team. He's been able to mould this team into how they play. Looking a lot more connected defensively. I've been loving Collins this season. 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐴 rarely gets beaten one-on-one. But it's just the case of, you'd expect, yes, Gold Coast to win this game well, given just looking at this matchup itself. But St Kilda can be funny sometimes with tipping, and Gold Coast can be funny sometimes when they're playing away from home. They lost to Richmond, the Saints, they beat the Dockers, and they blitzed them. So I would not be surprised if the Saints are able to get up here. To be fair, they are going to be without Jack Macrae, who's been really important in there with their midfield game. And I feel like in wins, he's been quality in that contested battle. Saints just need a much more connected performance because, yeah, their ball skills really were let down. I don't have the confidence to back in the Saints here, but it wouldn't shock me if they win. Yeah, I just think the Suns are looking like a lot more of a mature team as of late. And, yeah, they've just got to head into Marvel and get this game done. Really get dominance from their midfield and their forward half game to hum once again. So I'll tip the Suns here. But, yeah, I have a bit of questions thinking the Saints could cause a ball over here, given how inconsistent they've been. I'll back in the Suns, though, to win the final game of the round and win it by 19 points. So I've run there all my tips for round 11 of the 2025 AFL season. Let me know your tips down below in the comments section. This one's a really tricky round the tip. There's a lot of 50-50 odd games, and yeah, it should be interesting to see how all our tips go at the end of the round. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you did go on to enjoy today's video, everybody. And until next time, I'll talk to you later. See you later, folks.